to the Way of the Taibhsear. This is episode 26, Taliesin. This week's Celtic god is Borvo. Borvo is also known as Bormo, Bormanus, and Boris. Borvo is worshipped from Gaul to Germany and in other places throughout Celtic Europe. He is often equated with Apollo because of his association with the healing arts. He is a Celtic god of healing. Druids and Taibhsears of the Ovate or healing class often invoke the name of Borvo when performing ritual healing ceremonies. Some sing chants to Borvo while harvesting medicinal plants or making poultices and other medicines. His name means to bubble or to boil, and there are many mineral springs and healing pools throughout Europe that bear his name. The bubbling or boiling aspect of his name is also reminiscent of Ceridwen's boiling cauldron of inspiration and healing. Invoke Borvo when using healing energy or when you are in need of his strength due to health issues. If Borvo has come into your life, look to your health and seek healing. The Tale of Taliesin. In times past, there lived in Penland a man of gentle lineage, named Tegid Vole, and his dwelling was in the midst of the lake Tegid, and his wife was called Ceridwen. And there was born to him of his wife a son named Morven ap Tegid, and also a daughter named Criri. The fairest maiden in the world was she. And they had a brother, the most ill-favored man in the world, a Fagtu. Now Ceridwen, his mother, thought that he was not likely to be admitted among the men of noble birth, by reason of his ugliness, unless he had some exalted merits or knowledge. For it was in the beginning of Arthur's time, and of the Round Table. So she resolved, according to the arts of the books of the Fairlith, to boil a cauldron of inspiration and science for her son, that his reception might be honorable because of his knowledge of the mysteries of the future state of the world. Then she began to boil the cauldron, from which the beginning of its boiling might not cease to boil for a year and a day, until 3 blessed drops were obtained of the grace of inspiration. And she put the boy Gwienbach to stir the cauldron, and a blind man named Morda to kindle the fire beneath it. And she charged them that they should not suffer it to cease boiling for the space of a year and a day. And she herself, according to the books of the astronomers, and in planetary hours, gathered every day of all the charm-bearing herbs. And one day, towards the end of the year, as Ceridwen was culling plants and making incantations, it chanced that 3 drops of the charmed liquor flew out of the cauldron and fell upon the finger of Gwienbach. And by reason of their great heat, he put his finger to his mouth. And the instant he put those marvel-working drops into his mouth, he foresaw everything that was to come, and perceived that his chief care must be to guard against the wiles of Ceridwen, for vast was her skill. And in very great fear he fled towards his own land. And the cauldron burst in two, because of the liquor within it, except the 3 charm-bearing drops, was poisonous, so that the horses of Gwydno Geirnir were poisoned by the water of the stream into which the liquor of the cauldron ran. And the confluence of that stream was called the poison of the horses of Gwydno from that time forth. Thereupon came in Ceridwen, and saw that the toil of the whole year was lost. And she seized a billet of wood, and struck the blind Morda on the head until one of his eyes fell out upon his cheek. And he said, Wrongfully hast thou disfigured me, for I am innocent. Thy loss was not because of me. Thou speakest the truth, said Ceridwen. It was Gwienbach who robbed me. And she went forth after him running. And he saw her, and changed himself into a hare, and fled. But she changed herself into a greyhound, and chased him. And he ran towards the river, and became a fish. And she, in the form of an otter bitch, chased him under the water, until he was fain to turn himself into a bird of the air. She, as a hawk, followed him, and gave him no rest in the sky. And just as she was about to stoop upon him, and he was in fear of his death, he espied a heap of winnowed wheat on the floor of the barn, and he dropped down among the wheat, and turned himself into one of the grains. Then she transformed herself into a high-crested black hen, and went to the wheat and scratched it with her feet, and there found him out and swallowed him. And as the story says, she bore him 9 months, and when she was delivered of him, she could not find it in her heart to kill him by reason of his beauty. So she wrapped him in a leathern bag, and cast him into the sea to the mercy of the gods, on the 29th day of April. And at that time the weir of Gwyddno was on the strand near his own castle, and the value of 100 pounds was taken in that weir every May Eve. And in those days Gwyddno had an only son named Elphin, the most hapless of youths and the most needy. And it grieved his father sore, for he thought he was born in an evil hour. And by the advice of his council, his father had granted him the drawing of the weir that year, to see if good luck would ever befall him, and to give him something wherewith to begin in the world. And the next day, when Elphin went to look, there was nothing in the weir. But as he turned back, he perceived the leathern bag upon a pole of the weir. Then said one of the weir ward unto Elphin, Thou wast never lucky until tonight, and now thou hast destroyed the virtues of the weir, which has always yielded the value of 100 pounds every May Eve, and tonight there is nothing but this leathern skin in it. How now, said Elphin, there may be therein the value of 100 pounds. Well, they took upon the leather bag, and he who opened it saw the forehead of the boy within, and said to Elphin, Behold, a radiant brow. Taliesin shall he be called, said Elphin, for Taliesin means he of the radiant brow. And he lifted the boy up into his arms, and lamenting his mischance, he placed him sorrowfully behind him. And he made his horse amble gently, that before had been trotting. And he carried him as softly as if he had been sitting in the easiest chair in the world. And presently the boy made a consolation and a praise to Elphin, and foretold honor to Elphin. And the consolation was, as you may see, Fair Elphin, cease to lament. Let no one be dissatisfied with his own. To despair will bring no advantage. No man sees what supports him. The prayer of Sinlo will not be in vain. The gods will not violate their promise. Never in Gwyddno's Veer was there such a luck as this night. Fair Elphin, dry thy cheeks. Being too sad will not avail. Although thou thinkest thou hast no gain, too much grief will bring thee no good. Nor doubt the miracles of the gods. Although I am but little, I am highly gifted. From seas and from mountains, and from the depths of the rivers, the gods bring wealth to the fortunate man. Elven of the lively qualities, thy resolution is unmanly. Thou must not ever be sorrowful. Better to trust in the gods than to forebode ill. Weak and small as I am, on the foaming beach of this ocean, In the day of trouble I shall be to thee of more service than 300 salmon. Elfin of the notable qualities, be not displeased at thy misfortune. Although reclined thus weak in my bag, there lies a virtue in my tongue. While I continue thy protector, thou hast not much to fear. Remembering the names of the gods, none shall be able to harm thee. And this was the first poem that Taliesin ever sang, being to console Elfin in his grief for that the produce of the weir was lost, and what was worse, that all the world would consider that it was through his fault and ill luck. The tale of Taliesin is from the Welsh book of Celtic mythology known as the Mabinogion. This book dates back to the 12th or the 13th century and is the earliest known collection of tales of the Celtic mythology of the British Isles. The story of Taliesin's origin is a great illustration of what it means to be a shaman or a vision seeker in the Celtic tradition. It is the tale of the transformation of the young boy Gwienbach into the great bard Taliesin. This tale of Taliesin is very similar to the Irish tale of Finn MacCool. In both stories, the heroes accidentally received the divine wisdom of the Awen or the Imbus. Even the names, Finn or Fionn, in the Irish tale, and Gwyn or Gwian, in the Welsh tale, are similar. Both names mean white or fair. Caridwen is a manifestation of the white goddess. White represents enlightenment, wisdom, and the divine inspiration of the Awen. So the name Gwyn or Gwen means white or fair one of the goddess. The name Bach has two meanings. In the Germanic languages, Bach means one who dwells by the stream. In Middle Welsh, Bach meant small one. So if we take both shades of meaning into consideration, Bach could mean small one who lives by the stream. Stream, in this sense, has a double meaning. In the story, Caridwen's cauldron is literally by the stream. We know this because when it cracks, it poisons the horses of Gwydno, who are drinking downstream from the cauldron. But what we're concerned with here is the deeper meaning. The inspiration of the Awen flows like a stream from the cauldron of the goddess. So it is this stream of inspiration that is significant to the story and to Gwyn Bach's name. White is the color of the inspiration of the Awen. It is the color most often associated with the goddess in Celtic lore. Druids are even said to have worn white robes in honor of this divine inspiration. So one possible interpretation of the name Gwyn Bach is the small white or fair one who lives by the stream. The white or fair portion of the name is not only referring to Gwyn Bach's complexion, it is also referring to the goddess-given inspiration of the Awen that will soon dwell within him. He lives by the stream of divine inspiration that flows from the cauldron, and the cauldron is a symbol of the womb of the goddess. Near the end of the story, the boy Gwyn Bach, the small fair one who lives by the stream of inspiration, is transformed into Taliesin, he of the radiant brow. The significance of this name change is that our hero of the story no longer dwells beside the stream of inspiration. It is now radiating forth from within him. Specifically, it emanates from his brow. The Song of Avergan refers to the inspiration of the Awen or the Imbus as the fire in the head. And at the end of the story, this fire of inspiration is contained within the being of the bard Taliesin, radiating forth from his head or his brow. At the beginning of the story, Caridwen creates a potion of inspiration intended for her son, Avagdu. To create this potion, she consults with the books of the Fairlith. The Fairlith were a group of Druid alchemists. Their home was a place known as Dinas Imris, or Dinas Afaran. This magical city-fortress may have been the Celtic equivalent of the Library of Alexandria. It was said to contain vast stores of knowledge on subjects like metallurgy, herbalism, and alchemy. The citadel was where the Druids went to achieve the pinnacle of their arts. It was the Harvard of Druid education. It was known as the City of Higher Powers, or the City of Ambrosia. The ruins of this ancient Iron Age fortress are on a rocky and wooded hill in northwest Wales. It was a real place, and not merely the stuff of legend. Only the best of the best went there to learn. So when Caridwen consulted with the books of the Fairlith, she was seeking the highest knowledge available in the world at the time. Because of her son's ugliness, Caridwen creates this potion of inspiration for her son. She does so in the hope that it will grant him great wisdom so that he might be accepted into the company of noble men by virtue of his wisdom and great knowledge, instead of by virtue of his appearance. According to the story, he's quite ugly. In a time where kings were ineligible to continue their reign if they had any blemish at all whatsoever, Caridwen's obsession with Avagdu's looks is perhaps understandable. Caridwen appoints the boy Gwyn Bach to tend the cauldron for a year and a day. While tending the cauldron, some of the charmed potion accidentally spills on his finger. When he places the burnt finger into his mouth to soothe it, he receives the wisdom and inspiration of the cauldron, and so becomes the bard instead of a Vogdu. Note also that the name Vogdu means utter darkness. In other words, there is no light within him. Ceridwen's potion of inspiration of the divine light of the Awen was intended for her son Vogdu, but Gwienbach received it instead. Thus the story reminds us that the gods choose whom they will choose, in spite of our best laid plans. While there are many great skills that a bard may need to learn, and learning is definitely a part of the requirements to be a great bard, all the learning in the world will not help you if you have no natural talent for the art. Fate or the gods choose Gwienbach instead of Vogdu to receive the divine inspiration of the Awen, presumably because Gwienbach possesses something that Vogdu does not, a natural talent for the bardic arts. Before continuing our interpretation of the story, this would perhaps be a good time to talk about what a bard is in the context of the Celtic world. In modern usage, the word bard simply means a songwriter or a playwright, or maybe a composer of verse and prose. An ancient bard, however, was all of these things, but he or she was also much more. Celtic magic is deeply concerned with the naming and the calling of things. To know a person's given name was to have great power over that person. Celtic magic recognizes that language constructs reality. So a bard, someone who makes a living with words, has the ultimate power over reality. A bard is a person who weaves reality by weaving words into poems, prose, and songs. Ancient bards were magicians, in other words. They had the ability to walk between the worlds. They used their powers for divination, and to bless and curse, and to heal and destroy. It was said that a bard's music was so powerful that it could stop warring armies. So a bard was more than a musician or a poet. He was also a magician and a shaman. The device that starts Gwienbach on his journey of transformation and rebirth is Ceridwen's elixir of inspiration. While we don't know what may have been in this potion, it is known that shamanic cultures throughout the world and across time have used psychedelic potions to seek visions. So perhaps Ceridwen's magic potion is some sort of psychotropic recipe used to induce visions for the purpose of seeking knowledge in the other world. When the liquor of the divine inspiration touches Gwienbach's lips, he instantly recognizes what has happened to him. He is also able to see into the future and to know that Ceridwen will be angry that he has received the potion instead of her son Vogdu. Gwienbach sees that she will try to kill him, so he immediately undertakes a series of transformations. Note that each of these transformations gives him power over a different element. His first transformation is into the form of a hare. Ironically, hares are a totem animal of the goddess Ceridwen. Ceridwen is a goddess of the earth. So by making the transformation into a hare, Gwienbach gains power over the element of the earth. Next, Taliesin transforms himself into a fish. This tale doesn't specify what sort of fish Taliesin transformed himself into, but one tradition has it that the fish was a salmon. The salmon of wisdom figures prominently in the Irish mythological tale of Finn McCool, and it fits well with the general theme of the story here, as the boy Gwienbach is steadily gaining wisdom through the inspiration of the Awen. By transforming himself into a salmon, he gains power over the element of water. Next, Gwienbach transforms himself into a bird of the air. Again, the story from the Mabinogion doesn't specify which type of bird Gwienbach changes himself into. But the wren is often used here, because the wren is the druid bird. In fact, the Welsh word for wren and the Welsh word for druid are the same word, druwren. The wren is best known as the druid bird because in Celtic lands it is considered the craftiest and the wisest of all the birds. This transformation into a wise old bird gives Gwion power over the element of air. Finally, Gwion transforms himself into a grain of wheat. Wheat is baked into bread in the flames of an oven. In his poem, I Am Taliesin, the bard states that as a grain he fell to the floor while being roasted. So this transformation into a grain grants him the power of the element of fire. This grain is eaten by Ceridwen, the earth goddess, while in the guise of a black hen. She later gives birth to the bard Taliesin, thus completing Gwion transformation by the power of fire. Note the parallels between Gwion transformation into a grain and the idea of the green man as the feeder and sustainer of the people in the song John Barleycorn. In this song, a grain is planted in the soil that is the Mother Earth. This grain grows into a stalk that is cut down and harvested to feed the people. The grain is then born again in the womb of the Mother Earth and is transformed into sustenance for the people. This grain god must sacrifice his own life to feed the people and to be reborn again in the next season. In the story, the boy Gwion transforms himself into a grain, which is eaten by the goddess Ceridwen, the Mother Earth goddess. She carries this grain within herself for 9 months before giving birth to Taliesin. Thus the grain that was Gwion is transformed by the womb of the Earth Mother into the great bard and seer Taliesin. Shamanic cultures all over the world have associations with caves and earthen mounds. These caves and mounds often have narrow passages similar to birth canals. Apprentice vision seekers undergo rituals within these caverns so that they may be reborn to their new shamanic lives. This symbolic rebirth occurs when the new shaman crawls out of the cave or mound through the narrow passageway, enacting a symbolic new birth through the birth canal of the Mother Earth. The shaman has died to his old life and has been reborn to his new life, just as the boy Gwion died to his former life and was reborn as the bard Taliesin after spending an appropriate amount of time in the womb of the goddess. After Taliesin's transformative rebirth, the tale says that Ceridwen could not bring herself to kill him, but instead placed him in a leather bag and tossed him into the sea. Although the Mabinogion states that Taliesin was placed into a leather bag, the 16th century Liddarth manuscript by Anthony Powell has him being placed in a coracle. A coracle is a small one-man boat used to this day in Wales and some parts of southern England. It is round and rudderless and consists of a wooden frame covered with leather. There's some evidence that such boats were used in ancient times in shamanic rites. According to Pliny the Elder and Julius Caesar both, a vision seeker would push a coracle out to sea after ingesting psychotropic substances mixed with mead, then cover themselves with a hide. This hide was probably that of a bull. There's precedent for such sensory deprivation techniques in the Irish practice of tarvish, or bull sleep, in which a druid would feast on the flesh of a sacred bull, and then seek visions by wrapping himself in the hide of the bull. The gentle rocking motion of this coracle on the sea, combined with the sensory deprivation provided by the covering of the hide, and the altered consciousness provided by the psychotropic substances, combined to guide the druid to the visions he sought. Interestingly, a coracle is round and roughly cauldron-shaped, and is therefore another great symbol of the womb of the goddess. So when Taliesin was drawn out of the weir, he was reborn for a third time. For those who seek the way of the vision seeker, the tale of Taliesin is a perfect template. Gwion was chosen by the gods because of his natural talent. Then, through the inspiration of the Awen, he transforms himself several times, mastering all the elements. Finally, after gaining command over all these elements, he is born again 3 times, once from the cauldron, once from the womb of the goddess, and once from the coracle when he's drawn out of the weir by Elfin. Thus the boy Gwion, through the way of the Taibhsear, is reborn as the bard Taliesin.
For many years I've journeyed along the pagan way. Many roads I've traveled as I've grown. I've listened to the wise ones, heard what they had to say, until I found a path that was my own. Now that I am older, looking back on where I've been, I see how far we've come since we began. We honor in our own way those who came before, and thank them as they help us understand. Oberon and Isaac, Selena and Margot, Rolling Thunder, Starhawk, and the others we all know, who work the land and till the soil, plant the seed and watch it grow, for the harvest in the winter of the wheel. Yes, we've come a long way, but we still have far to go, to learn to live in harmony as one. We're living in the learning, and there's wisdom in the way, and miles to go before the journey's done. Now the snow is on the rooftop, but the fire is in the heart, and there's more days behind us than before. Now the old ways are the new ways, and we're learning as we grow, and the crone will be beside us evermore. Oberon and Isaac, Selena and Margot, Rolling Thunder, Starhawk, and the others we all know, who work the land and till the soil, plant the seed and watch it grow, for the harvest in the winter of the wheel. For the harvest in the winter of the wheel.
This Awen of air meditation is used to seek the Awen in matters associated with prosperity and vitality in your life. It is helpful when you seek a season of new growth and new vigor. The direction of the air is east. It may help when performing this meditation to face eastward if possible. This meditation is especially powerful if done while facing the rising sun. The season associated with the Awen of the air is the spring. As you begin this meditation, visualize the sunrise on the first day of spring. As you inhale, your breath is becoming the yellow light of the sun. Each inhaled breath draws more of the sun's life-giving energy into your body. Take a few deep breaths. With your mind's eye, watch the energy of your breath spread throughout your body. As you continue to breathe, picture yourself sitting on a mountainside. The mountain is covered with the first flowers of spring. You can smell their fragrance on the breeze. It is dawn and the dew is on the grass. Feel the cool dew against your skin becoming warmer as the sun rises before you. The Awen of the air is the Awen of taking action. As you breathe in the warm spring air on this hillside, what action do you need to take in your life to bring about new growth and new direction? The Awen of the air is the Awen of personal truths and subjective meanings. As you allow the inspiration of the Awen of the air into your consciousness, ponder your own personal truths. Is there any room for growth in your knowledge and wisdom? What seeds would need to be planted in order for you to achieve greater vitality and prosperity in your life? Which seeds might need to be pulled from your garden of mind so that the Awen of the air might plant new seeds and new fruits? The Awen of the air is the Awen of the farmer. Allow its inspiration to till the soil of your mind so that it may plant new ideas, new beliefs, new wisdom, and new inspiration deep in the soil of your consciousness so that you may reap a bountiful harvest when the time comes. What is the harvest that you seek? How can the Awen of air plant the seeds of this harvest in your mind? What will you do to till the soil and work the land? How will you feed and water the new seeds of wisdom. The farmer gently and lovingly labors in her fields, tending her crops until the harvest. How might the way of the farmer help you to cultivate the change you wish to see in your life? Nua of the Silver Hand rules the Awen of Air. Nua was once the king of the Tua de Danann, or the fairy people. When he fought the Firbolg at the first battle of Meg Tuath, his hand was severed from his body. According to Brean law, a king must be without blemish, so this wound disqualified him from the office of ruler of the children of Danu. Dian Keet, the god of healing, fashioned a hand of silver to replace the one Nua lost. With his new silver hand, he was eventually able to regain his kingship, and henceforth he was known as Nua of the Silver Hand. Although Nua had many adventures, he eventually relinquished his throne to the sun god Lu. In what ways have you abdicated rule over your own life? How might the Awen of Air help you to restore you to your rightful place? What is your silver hand? What has been cut away from you to be replaced by the God of healing? How will this replacement help you to achieve new growth and new vigor in your own life? Danu's gift from the Awen of the Air is the Sword of Nua. It is a symbol of masculine power and energy. No one ever escaped this sword once it was drawn, and no one could resist its power. What is your Sword of Nua? What irresistible power can the Awen of Air bring to you? What wisdom do you possess that others cannot escape? What masculine energies are influencing your life right now? What is your relationship to them? Are you at peace or at war with these energies? might your relationship to these energies change for the better? How might this sword of wisdom aid you in your quest for prosperity and vitality? As this meditation draws to a close, thank Danu, thank Nua, and thank Lu for the sword of wisdom they have bestowed upon you during this meditation. When you are ready, open your eyes and know that you have planted a seed today that will come to fruition in the harvest, when the masculine energy of the sun and the feminine energy of the earth are in balance with the Awen of air. The triad of the earth path of the Order of the Taibhsear is the Ogham, animal wisdom, and deep ecology. Starting with today's podcast, we're adding a new feature to the show, the Green Corner. This segment of the podcast will feature sustainable living topics. The Green Corner will discuss ways in which we may all live in harmony with nature. This week we'll start with a series on green transportation. The Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. It ended because there were better ideas about how to meet society's needs. Similarly, the end of our current oil age won't end because we run out of oil, even though that is quite possible within the next 30 years. It will end because we have better ways to meet our energy needs. Those better ways exist now, are proven, cost-effective, and have multiple benefits to society. Amory Levin's Rocky Mountain Institute. Former President George W. Bush famously stated that America is addicted to oil. As recent events in Iraq and other places in the Middle East can attest, America's addiction to oil has global repercussions. Although the United States makes up only 5% of the world's population, we use an estimated 25 to 30% of the world's energy resources. A large percentage of this energy consumption is oil and other fossil fuels. Clearly there is some truth to Bush's words. We are addicted. One of the characteristics common to addiction is denial. An addict doesn't want to admit he has a problem, so he finds creative ways to rationalize his addictive behavior. This may be the case with people who deny that humans are playing a significant part in global warming. Increasingly, scientific evidence demonstrates that human activities are having a considerable impact on the global average temperature. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's latest findings on global warming compared atmospheric samples with ice core samples dating back to 650,000 years ago. These ice core samples are drilled from the permafrost. This is frost that has never thawed. The contents of the atmosphere are trapped in the polar ice caps, creating a snapshot of atmospheric conditions hundreds of thousands of years ago. By studying the ice core samples, the atmosphere may be analyzed for thousands of years in the past. The IPCC study concluded that the natural current atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide exceeds by far the natural range over the last 650,000 years, as determined from ice cores. The report also concluded that it is more likely than not that man-made factors are contributing substantially to the increase in global average temperatures, and that it is very unlikely that the changes in climate during the past 7 centuries were caused by natural climate variability alone. In other words, human activities are contributing significantly to global warming. In the section of the IPCC report on predictions based on climate modeling, the study concluded that it is very likely that in the future we will experience more frequent heat waves, periods of heavier precipitation, more intense hurricanes and cyclones, major changes in the wind, precipitation, and weather patterns, and constant and consistent rise in sea levels. Even if carbon dioxide emissions were stabilized today, the damaging effects could continue up to 1,000 years. The IPCC is made up of the top scientists in the fields of meteorology, climatology, and other related sciences from 114 countries worldwide. Over 90% of the scientists who work with the IPCC are in agreement that human activities are playing a significant part in climate change. Transportation plays a large factor in greenhouse gas emission. Our reliance on non-renewable fossil fuels is contributing to the destruction of the environment as well as to the unrest in unstable parts of the world. The good news, however, is that there are many alternative forms of transportation within our reach. Some of these don't even require the development of new technologies. We already have the technologies to implement many of these solutions. All that remains is to establish a market for them. In coming weeks in this segment of the podcast, we'll examine some of these solutions and their pros and cons. The information presented in this segment of the podcast is designed to be more of an overview of the current technology than an in-depth technical manual. When information is available, we'll provide links to resources, and if you're interested in learning more, you can find out more through the links that we provide.
In the way of the Taibhsear, we use the Celtic tree alphabet known as the Awen. In this section of the podcast, we will present one character of the Awen each week, offering information on the meaning of each letter of the Awen alphabet, trees associated with each letter, the healing and magical properties of each tree, gods and goddesses associated with each tree and letter, and the divinatory meanings of each letter of the Awen. Since we will be discussing medicinal uses of the plants in this segment of the podcast, please remember that herbal medicine requires caution and practice. None of the medicinal uses discussed on the Way of the Taibhsear podcast should be attempted by a novice. Some parts of the plants of the Awen are poisonous, and people with allergies should also be aware of the potential allergic reactions to plants. If you are interested in herbal medicine, find a skilled practitioner and take lessons. Do not attempt to use medicinal plants without the supervision of an expert.
The letters TH in the Awen alphabet are represented by Or. Its divinatory meaning is talent, creativity, and genius. In Europe, the tree used for this letter is the spindle tree. It was so named because its wood was used for making spindles for spinning wheels. In the United States, many orders use the arrowwood for this plant. Since the Order of the Taibhsear's home is in the mountains of the Carolinas, we use the pink dogwood for this letter of the Awen. Healing properties. An infusion of the bark of the pink dogwood stimulates digestion in small doses. In larger doses, it causes stomach irritation and possibly even vomiting. This infusion is also a mild diuretic and aids in promoting regular bowel movements. It's especially good for treating ailments of the liver. During Civil War times, an infusion of the bark was used to treat symptoms of malaria. A tea made from the blossoms of the pink dogwood has astringent properties when used topically. It's also a stimulant and a tonic. Native Americans of the Carolinas, including the Cherokee, made toothbrushes out of twigs of dogwood by chewing on the end. Magical uses of the pink dogwood. Dogwood is an especially potent protector herb. It keeps writings and meetings secret. Because of this, if you make an oil of the flowers and seal your letters with this oil, its magic will keep your communications safe from prying eyes. Make a charm out of dogwood and carry it in your crane bag for added protection. Dry the flowers in the bark and then crush them together and use them as incense when crafting protective spells. Place a few drops of the sap of the dogwood into a handkerchief or a scarf. At midnight on Midsummer's Eve, say a wish 3 times, then carry the kerchief with you until your wish comes true. The pink dogwood is the tree of balance. It helps you to understand your shadow side and to express it in positive rather than negative ways. Its magic helps you to communicate clearly with those around you and to avoid misunderstandings. It's a tree of endings as well. If you have difficulty completing tasks, a charm of pink dogwood will help you to see through to your objective. A wand of pink dogwood may be used in divination to help you find a solution to a difficult problem. Dogwood's magic helps you to put aside masks and pretensions and to find your true self. Gods and goddesses associated with Ur are Ingus MacOg and Ostara. You've been listening to the Way of the Taibhsear podcast on International Pagan Radio, where it's all pagan all the time. This has been episode 26, Taliesin. Music on this episode featured Mists of Manannan by Taibhsear and Winter of the Wheel from the upcoming album of the same name by Shenka the Vate, due out in fall of this year. If you'd like to be notified when the Winter of the Wheel album is available, visit shenkathevate.com. That's SENCHATHEVATE.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is the official podcast of the Order of the Taibhsear. You can learn more about us at taibhsear.com. That's TAIBHSEAR.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is a podcast about Druidry and paganism as practiced by the Order of the Taibhsear. Paganism is a wide and diverse community, and we don't claim to speak for all pagans. You can get in touch with us at the show at podcast@taibhsear.com. Again, that's podcast@taibhsear.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is sponsored by Elder Grove Seminary